Family and fellow soldiers, I'm the Professor, and this is the Moment of Truth. And now, the Friday Crime Report. Over this last Memorial Day weekend, there were a lot of mass shootings in the U.S., most of which didn't get much media attention at all, but I think it important with a lot of people talking about mass shootings in the news, and especially how there was this huge spike over Memorial Day weekend, we need to go ahead and cover some of those that the media decided to neglect. Now, shout out to Brother Tariq for helping to publicize this one and bring it to the people's attention. This first incident came out of Florence, South Carolina. It occurred on last Saturday, the 28th, as the Memorial Day weekend was just getting underway. The white media has been willing to report that this piece of trash, Charles Allen, was shooting at cars on Old River Road in Florence, South Carolina. Some of them have mentioned that he murdered a child. But what they haven't been so eager to mention is that he killed a black child, and that he was also shooting at other cars that day, and it's suspected that he was targeting black motorists. The child who this creep killed was 8-year-old Quarius Nakwa Dunham, who was shot in the neck by this inbred. That child had been on vacation in South Carolina along with his mother and father, who were also in the car. His father was also shot in the leg, but isn't believed to have a life-threatening injury. Calvin Cade, another motorist who Allen attempted to kill, attended Allen's bond hearing, and he said a round hit the roof of his car as he drove on Old River Road. He said that he noticed Allen was taking aim at him, and he said he's going to shoot again. Cade ducked and stepped on the accelerator to get past Allen as Allen fired a second time. The Florence County SWAT team had a brief standoff with the killer before taking him into custody. Another arrest without injury. Allen's currently being held without bond. Allen's been charged with 4 counts of discharging a firearm into an occupied vehicle, as well as single counts of murder, attempted murder, and possession of a weapon during the commission of a violent crime. The sheriff down there, some good old boy named T.J. Moy, is already white-splaining. He's dismissing the whole matter, saying there was no discernible motive, just probably methed up. That's what he said, just probably methed up. He's got a history. Very interesting that he would say that, because neither the sheriff, Cletus, nor the white media has been revealing Allen's criminal history or what kind of priors he's got. But I've done enough of these that we can all safely assume he's done all kinds of foul and illegal activity, and he's been allowed to skate each and every time because this is how it always is. With so little information about the shooter or his victims having been released, this feels less like media coverage and more like a media cover-up. But we'll be keeping an eye on this one. But that was only part of the tragic bloodshed that was happening over Memorial Day weekend that the media didn't talk about. There was also a terrible incident out of Michigan, far worse than this one, believe it or not. On last Friday, the 27th, as Memorial Day weekend was just starting, Charles Gillum of Mecosta County, Michigan, murdered his wife and their 3 children before finally turning the gun on himself. He was last reported as having survived the suicide attempt, though he remains in critical condition. But 4 innocent people died. 3 of them children ages 6, 4, and even 3, and this was just the start of the Memorial Day weekend. Now, I'm sure you didn't hear about this, and that's understandable. After the slaughter in Uvalde at an elementary school, I'm sure there are those in the media who I guess wouldn't want to give this story much coverage because it's just more dead kids, and I agree. Dead youngsters is tragic and uniquely depressing. Though for some reason the media on the white right will wait months to see if a black child gets shot, or better yet, if a black child dies in Chicago, just so they can crow about it. And make no mistake, they celebrate when these little lives are lost, because to them that gives them an opportunity to push a racist narrative that, well, this kind of thing only happens in Chicago and it would never happen anywhere else. And when it happens in a red state like South Carolina or Michigan, they just ignore it. So dead children only count if Tucker Carlson or Sean Hannity can use their corpses as nothing more than fodder for their racist agenda. 3 children dead in Michigan along with their mother. And the same people who obsess over anything that happens in Chicago don't even bother to mention this. So much for all lives matter, I suppose. There were a lot of shootings in Chicago over the weekend, as there are in red cities like Miami, where over 30 people were shot. But in Chicago, I don't recall any 6, 4, or 3-year-olds being shot over the Memorial Day weekend. or even killed for that matter. I say that because it's very important that we not let the right-wing racists use weasel words and lies by omission. They try to conflate a shootout by criminals as being the same thing as a mass killing, which is when someone deliberately goes to a place with the intention of killing multiple people. A mass shooting is bad, but it's not the same as a mass killing. Gangbangers getting into a shootout where 7 or so people are wounded, even bystanders, that's nothing to sniff at, and it should be taken dead seriously. But you can't compare people being wounded by gunfire to 4 fatalities. That monster in Michigan who murdered his own children and the children's mother, he's far worse than gangbangers in Chicago, because that guy in Michigan, he intended to kill those children. And then he went and actually did it. And this is not me splitting hairs. This is not a distinction without a difference. You cannot tell me that dead and wounded is a distinction without a difference. Somebody who is dead is not wounded by gunfire, they're dead. So it's important to understand if something's being reported in the media, especially if they're trying to do the usual drumbeat of Chicago, make sure you'd find out whether or not it was a mass shooting or a mass killing. Because speaking of which, there were other Memorial Day mass killings that didn't make the news at all, such as William Potts of Phoenix, Arizona. He was 80 years old, and he killed his wife, who was the same age. Then he killed both their dogs before finally killing himself. That's how bad this last Memorial Day weekend was. Even the pets weren't safe. So it was a very deadly Memorial Day weekend indeed. And I agree with those in the white media who say that we ought to remember the victims who died over the last weekend. Except the difference is, I require that we remember all of them. Our final entry in this week's crime report we can file under police commands that you shouldn't comply with. Jerry Glover is 81 years old, and for some reason this fossil is an active duty deputy with the Walker County Sheriff's Department in Georgia. Yet another sterling example of why that state has some of the finest law enforcement in America. Well, Jerry Glover's been arrested now, and he's being held without bond on a charge of rape, which he is said to have committed while he was on duty and in uniform. Now, the accusation was leveled at him last month. He was fired on May 27th, but they didn't get around to finally arresting him until yesterday. Does anyone think that if Glover had accused his victim of committing a crime against him, that it would have taken this long for her to be arrested? Glover reportedly went to the victim's home and forced her to have sex inside the residence before he went back out on patrol, presumably to look for his next victim. How many of the police are doing the same thing as this Glover creep? Think about that next time you see a police car parked on a street for no reason or in somebody's driveway and the cop is nowhere to be seen. Glover's also been charged with violation of oath of office and false imprisonment. And if that sounds familiar, it should, because that's exactly what Daniel Holtzclaw did. That entire sheriff's department needs to be investigated. How do you have a man old enough to be a great-grandfather still on duty, and this guy's going to people's houses and otherwise having contact with the public? Clearly, this was the good old boy network giving patronage jobs to certain people. This is why I call the police a street gang, because that's how they operate. And as for prior offenses, well, because this guy happens to be in law enforcement, that means it doesn't apply to him. Now, according to the records of POST, that's the Peace Officer Standards and Training Council, Glover has no disciplinary record, which shouldn't surprise anybody. Almost all the thugs with badges who have been incarcerated for murder had no disciplinary record. And another rapist cop, Daniel Holtzclaw, he had no disciplinary record either. That is, before he got charged with serial rape. The police never punish these creeps. They only do that with cops who cross the blue line. So to say that he has no disciplinary record, that means he's dirty as hell. And he's had a dang long time to be committing crimes and preying on the public. He began his career in crime back in 1967 with the Atlanta Police Department. He worked there for 10 years. In 78, he went to go work for the Walker County Sheriff's Office, and he's had a number of stints with them. What that means is for 50 plus years, this creep has been out here preying on the public. That's a dang long time for a criminal to be on the loose, but we're supposed to believe that this was his first offense. 50 years he's been on the loose. And he worked in Atlanta. We can only imagine what kind of crimes he was committing there. Does anyone think it was some kind of coincidence that he left the Atlanta PD only a few years after the city elected its first black mayor? So you see, it wasn't just Ahmaud Arbery who also was a victim of dirty cops in Georgia. That's just the standard there. This guy is not unique at all. He's not extraordinary. He's exactly what you're going to get. This guy raped a woman, then he went back on the streets. I can only wait for the Fox News crowd to say that he was just doing his job. I'm sure the police union won't mind sticking up for him either. Fraternal Order of Police love putting up money to defend guys like them, though it will probably depend on what color his accuser is. For the people who complain about how bad the crime is, this is who you have as police in America. And miss me with the crap that they can't find qualified people who are willing to work in law enforcement. That's a lie. The problem is that the police themselves are the ones who select who gets on the force. They're the ones who handle the entire process. And that's why you have trash like Daniel Pantaleo, Derek Chauvin, Amber Geiger, and this maggot running around. They make sure that they keep people out who are actually going to do the job of keeping the community safe, and instead they're looking for people who are going to be new recruits for the gang. Society is letting the criminals guard the bank, and these are the predictable and tragic results. There's no way that anybody thought that it was a good idea to have this wrinkled-up rapist behind a badge at his age. It's just professional courtesy among crooks, that's all it is. It's not black people who give the police a bad rep. They give it to themselves. So you make sure to keep this little incident in mind next time you have some white supremacist or somebody in the white media saying you should comply with whatever the police tell you to do. Only a fool complies with anything that someone tells them to do. You only comply if the police are within the bounds of the law. Though based on their own behavior and the standards of their own organizations, they don't seem to know or even care what's legal. So family, keep your eyes and ears open and stay on alert, because there's a lot worse criminals out there than the ones that the white corporate media chooses to talk about. That's this week's crime report. Good day, and be one. I'd like to take a moment to mention some of our contributors. David Green, Detroit Beauty Supply, Kenneth Prescia, Philander Bryant, and Radia Bay. Salute to them, and thank you to everyone for listening, liking, and sharing this message. Black empowerment only exists because of you.